Hey, oh, wow. Yo, Breeze 3000. Yo, come on now. Yo, shout out to Vizo Breeze for that one, yo. Yo, good looking out, brother, for that beat. Yeah, yeah. Hold on, guys. One love, pura vida. Pura vida. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you guys taking the time to do that. Hey Kwame, man, welcome, man. You always on time, man. You always on time. Shout out to everybody in the live chat, all the moderators, all the patrons, all the channel members. Appreciate you. All the real followers, all the long time followers, all the quiet ones out there. I know you guys have been following for a long time. Appreciate you guys. All right, today we're just gonna get into an interesting book here, from the 1800s. Going to tell us a little bit of the migration story. Not all of it. We're going to definitely get into the migration story of the Muskogee speaking nations, what they call in Muskogee. That's not, they had other Hachiti, and other ones before that, but the origin, of their legends and stuff. So we're going to read a little bit today. This guy, we're going to read the author. He was with the Southeast Indians for about 40 years. So he learned a lot of their stories, and this is one of the official ones coming out of the official translations. So we're gonna get a part of the story and a lot of history in colonial times. We're gonna deal a little bit with DeSoto again and that history. All right, we're gonna go over a lot of information we've gone over before, but from a different book. Bezo Breeze, shout out for the beat, Bezo. Yo, you already know. Thanks for tuning in once again. We got a good crowd. That's what I wanted. All right, that's what I wanted. Hey, yeah. Hey, yeah. Breeze 3000. Guys, let me know if the music is too loud. I'll put it down. All right. So real quick, access genealogy. A lot of people be asking me, where you get all your sources? I want to give an example of how to find sources, right? Hopefully you guys can, the music is not too loud. Let me know if it is. Okay. So, for example, you go to online, you find websites and information on certain things, like right here you got on Access Genealogy, which is a pretty good website when it comes to a lot of the more more historical information, at least with sources that you can follow up on, um, you know, as much as you can, right? So the Choctaw tribe, right? We're gonna get into them and the Chickasaw and the Natchez and other peoples they associated with while we're reading. So here, for example, it's telling us. I thought it was pretty interesting. Choctaw tribe phrases. According to Morgan, who's Morgan? And then it has six number here, right? A footnote. So the Choctaw were divided into two phrases, each including four gentes, as follows: four people, gente. We use the same word in Spanish. Cuchapocla, divided people. Watahi hulata, beloved people. All right. Then it has four clans or four divisions each. But what I want to show you is, so it's telling me Morgan said that, right? So I go to number six. The footnote says Morgan, ancient society. So we go look for it. Ancient society, Morgan, PDF. right? First thing that pops up, okay? So we go to the source itself, right? And on page 99, as I said, so this is from 1877, Ancient Society by Lewis Morgan. In some of the tribes, the freight trees stand out prominently upon the face of the organization. Oops, sorry. Thus, the Choctaw Gentes are united in two freight trees, which must be mentioned first in order to show the relation of the Gentes to each other. The first freight tree is called Divided People and contains four Gentes. The second is called Beloved People and also contains four Gentes. The separation of the people into two divisions by Gentes created two freight trees. Some knowledge of the functions of these freight trees is of course desirable, but without it, the fact of their existence is established by the divisions themselves. The evolution of a confederacy from a pair of gentes for less than two are never found in any tribe may be deduced theoretically from the known facts of Indian experience. Thus, the gens increases in the number of the members and divides into two. These again subdivide and in time reunite in two or more phratries. These phratries form a tribe, and its members speak the same dialect. In course of time, this tribe falls into several by the process of segmentation, which in turn reunite in a confederacy. Such a confederacy is a growth through the tribe and phratry from a pair of gentes. The Chickasaws are organized in two phratries, of which one contains four, and the other eight gentes as follows. The Panther phratry, panther, huh? Gentes, wild cat. Two, bird. Three, fish. Four, deer. The second is Spanish phratry, gentes five, raccoon. The sixth, the Spanish, huh? Seven, the royal. The eight, Hushkoni. The nine, squirrel. The 10, alligator. 11, wolf. 12, blackbird. The particulars with respect to the Choctaw and Chickasaw phratries I am unable to present. Some 14 years ago, these organizations were given to me by Reverend Dr. Cyrus Binghamton and Reverend Charles C. Copeland, but without discussing their uses and functions. A very complete illustration of the manner in which phratries are formed by natural growth through the subdivision of gentes is presented by the organization of the Mohegan tribe. It had three original gentes: the wolf, the turtle, and the turkey. All right, so again, why am I doing this? Just want to show people because somebody was asking me, how do you, where do you find your sources? You got to kind of dig and look for sources. You got to verify everything you're reading. So pretty interesting information. Good. I'm going to share this link in the chat in case anybody wants to follow up. They have pretty good links to different things. And I think even here you can find a link to the book we're going to read today, or a mention here. Let me see. I think it's in here somewhere. Yeah, I think it's somewhere in here. So you guys can follow the links. All right. Before we continue, just want to go ahead and mention, in my Patreon, make sure to, if you want to support in any way, only if you can, willing and able, no pressure at all. You got, don't mention the Chasers, Patreon exclusive right here. And yeah, it's got like almost 800 views just on Patreon, so it's getting views. And also, I share a lot of books here on the Patreon page. And today we're going to read this one. I've shared this on my Patreon page and others. This is another book we're reading. All right, some announcement, a PowerPoint, and so on. I got many, many books in here. All right, check out the Patreon. So again, we're getting into the book History of the Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Natchez Indians by H.B. Cushman. Copyright 1899. All right, from 1899. And again, he goes on to tell you how long he lived with the Indians, what he learned from them, who he got the info from, all this stuff. He goes on really very thoroughly talking about other nations and his theories also of origins of Indians and all that, like most any other authors. A lot of it, you got to dodge the hijack and the parts they add their own. But we're going to get to a part where he starts talking about the history, what he got, from the oral traditions of the Chickasaw and Choctaw. All right, so we're going to go to Brown. Let me see, page 62, I believe. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, page 62 of this book, it says the ancient traditional history of the Choctaws and Chickasaws, the former signifying separation and the latter rebellion. Separation and rebellion from the Muskogees, now known as Creeks. I remember that's more like a language, not a tribe. So again, gotta really understand all this stuff. We're gonna definitely get into all that as we go. Who, according to tradition, were once of one tribe before their migration from some distant country far to the west to their ancient domain east of the Mississippi River, which is of more than dubious authority, claims for them a Mexican origin. All right, a Mexican origin, and a migration from that country at some remote period in the past under the leadership of two brothers, respectively named Choctaw and Chickasaw. All right, that's where they get their name from. It's always, most of the time, it's progenitors that are naming the nations, guys. We've read that throughout history. No different here. We got Chata and Chickasaw, two brothers, both noted and influential chiefs to their possessions east of the Mississippi. Adair, so again, Adair, another person who lived amongst the Southeast Indians for over 40 years, and his American Indian says the Choctaws and Chickasaws descended from a people called Chicamaca, all right? Chicamacas. So what he's saying, who were among the first inhabitants of the Mexican Empire, huh? Let me see. Chicamacas. Chichimeca. Chichimeca. Chichimacas. All right, that's just one version from Adair. Remember, he lived along, his wife, if I'm not mistaken, was a Choctaw. Yes. All right, he lived with them for over 40 years, and we've read much of his American Indians book, which most of the book is trying to prove they were, Hebrews or Israelites. Like if you read the book, we read it. Check out my Hebrew videos. We read a lot of it. All right. He explains how they were saying Yohe Washi, Yohe Washi, Yehoshua. So, anyways, the Choctaws and the Chickasaws descended from a people called Chiquemacas, the macaw bird, Chiquemaca, who were among the first inhabitants of the Mexican Empire, and at an ancient period wandered east with a tribe of Indians called Chocomas, Chocomas, and finally crossed the Mississippi River with a force of 10,000 warriors. It is reasonable to suppose that the name Choctaw has its deviation from Chocoma and Chickasaw from Chiquemaca, both corrupted, as they claim, and no doubt justly, the names Choctaw and Chickasaw to be their ancient and true names. Their tradition in regard to their origin, as related by the eight Choctaws to the missionaries in 1820, was in substance as follows. Okay? In a remote period of the past, their ancestors dwelled in a country far distant toward the setting sun, and being conquered and greatly oppressed by a more powerful people, the Spaniards, under Cortes, you guys here, resolved to seek a country far removed from the possibility of their oppression. A great national council was called to which the entire nation in one vast concourse quickly responded. After many days spent in grave deliberations upon the question in which so much was involved, a day was finally agreed upon and a place of rendezvous duly appointed, whence they should bid a final adieu to their old homes and country and take up their line of march to seek others, they knew not where. When the appointed day arrived, it found them at the designated place, fully prepared and ready for the exodus under the chosen leadership of two brothers, Chata and Chickasaw, both equally renowned for their bravery and skill in war and their wisdom and prudence in council, who, as Moses and Aaron, led the Jews in their exodus from Egypt, just like Moses and Aaron, leading the Jews from their exodus in Egypt, were to lead them from a land of oppression to one of peace, prosperity, and happiness. The evening before their departure, a fabusa pole, crow as fabusa, was firmly set up in the ground at the center point of their encampment by direction of their chief medicine man and prophet, whose wisdom in matters pertaining to things supernatural was unquestioned, and to whom, after many days' fasting and supplication, the Great Spirit had revealed that the Fabusa would indicate on the following morning the direction they should march by its leaning, and as the star led the Magri to where the world's infant Redeemer and Savior sweetly reposed, so the leaning of the pole on each returning morn would indicate the direction they must travel day by day until they reached the south and desired haven, when on the following morn it would dare and then remain as erect as it had been placed the evening before. All right, you guys see the story how they were making their way, how the Great Spirit, the Most High, was leading them, just like Moses and Aaron. They're saying. So I do want to point out, they're saying this is when they left. There was already a migration of different peoples coming from Mexico, the Caribbean, South America, into the Southeast. Before that, that's where you get all these different languages and clans and all that, but they're all kind of related. This is what I was saying earlier in my life. You know, if you start following all these people, they'll probably end up relating anyways at a different origin point. All right. So, but this is one of their big stories. You know, there was people that came during the conquest of Mexico by the conquistadors and had gone into the southeast. So it says, without at the early dawn of the following morning, many solicitous eyes were turned to the silent but prophetic Fabusa. Lo, it leaned to the east. Enough. Without hesitation or delay, the mighty host began its line of march toward the rising sun and followed each day the morning directions given by the talismanic pole, which was borne by day at the head of the moving multitude and set up at each returning evening in the center of the encampment, alternately by the two renowned chiefs and brothers, Choctaw and Chickasaw. For weeks and months they journeyed toward the east as directed by the undeviating Fabusa, passing over wide extended plains and through forests vast and abounding with game of many varieties, seemingly undisturbed before by the presence of man, from which their skillful hunters bountifully supplied their daily wants. Gladly would they have accepted as their future asylum many parts of the country through which they traveled, but were forbidden, as each returning morn the unrelenting pole still gave its silent but comprehended command eastward and onward. After many months of wearisome travel, suddenly a vast body of flowing water stretched its mighty arm athwart their path. With unfeigned astonishment, they gathered in groups upon its banks and gazed upon its turbid waters. Never before had they even heard of, or in all their wonderance stumbled upon about aught like this. Whence its origin? Where its terminus? This is surely the great Father, the true source of all waters, right? Or the great river, the Nile, the true Nile. They're talking about the Mississippi. They're like, wow, what is this great river, great water? This has to be the Father of the true source of all waters, whose age is wrapped in the silence of the unknown past, ages beyond all calculation. And as they then there named it Misha Sipogni, beyond age, whose source and terminus are unknown. Surely a more appropriate, beautiful, and romantic name than its usurper Mississippi, without any signification. But who can tell when the waters of the Misha Sipogni first found their way from the little Utaska lake hidden in its northern home to the faraway gulf amid the tropics of the south? Who, when those ancient Choctaws stood upon its banks and listened to its murmurings, which alone disturbed the silence of the vast wilderness that stretched away on every side, could tell of its origin and over what mighty distances it rolled its muddy waters to their ultimate destiny? And who today would presume to know or even conjecture through what mysterious depths its surging currents struggle ere they plunge into the southern Gulf or the Mediterranean, the true Mediterranean? But what now, says the dumb talisman? Is Misha Sipogni to be the terminus of their toils? Are the illimitable forest that so lovingly embraced in their wide extended arms its restless waters to be their true or their future homes? Not so. Silent and motionless, still as ever before, it bows to the east and its mandate onward, beyond the Mississippi or beyond the Mississippi, is accepted without a murmur, and at once they proceed to construct canoes and rafts by which in a few weeks all were safely landed upon its eastern banks, whence again was resumed their eastward march, and so continued until they stood upon the western banks of the Yazoo River, and once more encamped for the night, and as had been done for many months before, ere evening began to unfold her curtains and twilight had spread over all her mystic light, the Fabusa, now truly their Delphian oracle, was set up, but ere the morrow's sun had plainly lit up the eastern horizon, many anxiously watching eyes that early rested upon its straight, slender, silent form, observed it stood erect as when set up the evening before, and then was borne upon that morning breeze. Throughout the vast sleeping encampment, the joyful acclamation, Foha Upishno Jak, Foha Upishno Jak, Ro as Foha, rest, Ushit, Upishno, we all of us, Jak, here, we all rest here. Now their weary pilgrimage was ended, and flattering hope portrayed their future destiny in the bright colors of peace, prosperity, and happiness. Then, as commemorative of this great event in their national history, they threw up a large mound embracing 3 acres of land and rising 40 feet in a conical form, with a deep hole about 10 feet in diameter excavated on the top, and all enclosed by a ditch encompassing nearly 20 acres. After its completion, it was discovered not to be erect but a little leaning, and they named it Nuni, mountain or mount, Weya, leaning, pro as Nuni, Weya. This relic of the remote past still stands half buried in the accumulated rubbish of years unknown, disfigured also by the desecrating touch of time, which has plainly left his finger marks of decay upon it, blotting out its history with all others of its kind. Those memorials of ages past erected by the true native American, about which so much has been said in conjecture and so much written in speculation, true Native American, that all now naturally turn to anything from their modern conjectures and speculations with much doubt and great misgivings. Several years afterward, according to the tradition of the Choctaws as narrated to the missionaries, the two brothers, still acting in the capacity of chiefs, disagreed in regard to some national question, and as Abraham suggested to Lot the propriety of a separation, so did Chickasaw propose to Chata, but not with that unselfishness that Abraham manifested to Lot, since Chickasaw, instead of giving to Chata the choice of directions, proposed that they should leave it to a game of chance, game, to which Chata readily acquiesced. Thus it was played. All right, they settled the dispute playing a game, right? This is what we learn about how the ancients settled their disputes a lot of the times. Thus it was played. They stood facing each other, one to the east and the other to the west, holding a straight pole, 10 or 15 feet in length, in an erect position between them, with one end resting on the ground, and both were to let go of the pole at the same instant by a prearranged signal, and the direction in which it fell was to decide the direction in which Chickasaw was to take. If it fell to the north, Chickasaw and his adherents were to occupy the northern portion of the country, and Chata and his adherents the southern. But if it fell to the south, then Chickasaw with his followers was to possess the southern portion of the country, and Chata with his the northern. The game was played, and the poll decreed that Chickasaw should take the northern part of their then vast and magnificent territory. Thus they were divided and became two separate and distinct tribes, each of whom assumed and ever afterwards retained the name of their respective chiefs, Chata and Chickasaw. The ancient traditions of the Cherokees, as well as the ancient traditions of the Muskogees or Creeks, you know, like made up names, guys. Like, so they're all the same family, but again, a lot of the difference is that there was a lot of people migrating and also in the southeast since ancient times too, not just coming from Mexico. So, but yeah, they spoke an ancient language that they all kind of spoke together. And then it says, and the Natchez also point back to Mexico. So let's go back. Again, the ancient traditions of the Cherokees, as well as the ancient tradition of the Muskogees, Creeks, and the Natchez also point back to Mexico as the country from which they, in a period long past, moved to their ancient possessions east of the Mississippi River. But whether they preceded the Choctaws and Chickasaws or came after, their traditions are silent. All right, so you see the confusions they got, but very important, right? They all had kind of like the similar origin stories. We are going to get into the migration story of the so called Creeks, so called. They didn't call themselves that. And so, what I want to point out also, they're saying the Cherokees say they came from, well, not all of them, a lot of them. Cherokees is very interesting, guys. It's a mixture of a lot of different peoples and tribes. It's almost like a confederation. And we'll start breaking that down if we haven't already in previous videos a lot. But don't worry. So, where were we? Okay, so they're also coming, their origin story from Mexico. Milford in page 269 says, Big Warrior, chief of the Cherokees as late as 1822, not only confirms their tradition that Mexico was their native country, but goes back to a more remote period for their origin and claims that his ancestors came from Asia, from Bering Strait, huh? Yeah, right. Really? Dodge the hijack. This is what I'm saying. What Milford was the name of the book? Let's verify. Thanks to the country east of the Mississippi River where they were first known to the Europeans. Mr. Gaines, United States agent to the Choctaws in 1810, asked a Apucha Matahualbi, or Arapucha Matarhahuibi, the most renowned chief of the Choctaws, since their acquaintance with the white race or Europeans. Remember, this is a lot of black Europeans settling in with these people too. So that's the hijack when they're saying white race, concerning the origin of his people, who replied, Ah, Hatak Tikba, Bushiakiutula, Hosh Hopaki, Fena Moma Ka Minti. As Arn, my forefather, the West, all came far very. Yeah, that didn't say nothing about no Bering Strait, right? Or Asia, right? And the same response was always given by all the ancient Choctaws living east of the Mississippi River when the inquiry was made of them. When's their origin? So, the one who was saying that was supposedly the Cherokee guy. That's what I was saying, guys. A lot of the Cherokee includes other, maybe he. So where were we right here? By the by this the only referred. Okay, sorry. By this they only refer to the country in which their forefathers long dwelt prior to their exodus to the east of the Mississippi River, as they also had a tradition that their forefathers come from a country beyond the big waters, far to the northwest, crossing a large body of water in their canoes of days, travel thence down the Pacific coast to Mexico, the same as the Cherokees, all right? So where do they say that? They all start in Mexico. In conversation with an aged Choctaw in the year 1884, Robert Nail, a long known friend, upon the subject, he confirmed that the tradition by stating that his people first came from Asia. So 1880s, right? Robert Nail, we got to see who he is. So that's why I'm saying you got to dodge the hijack. When we're talking about ancient people, are we talking about people from the 1500s, 1600s, or 18, almost 1900s? He was a man well versed in geography, being taught in boyhood by the missionaries, prior to their removal from there. So this guy's learning from the missionaries instead of the missionaries learning from the Indians, right? Like earlier about Chickasaw and Choctaw coming from Mexico. Yeah, so Texas was part of Mexico too, California, but seems their migration actually means the place called Mexico. today. Yeah. So by the missionaries removed from their eastern homes to their present abode north of Texas. The Muskogees, Shawnees, Delawares, Chippewas, and other tribes also have the same traditions pointing beyond Bering Strait. So again, dodge the hijack. This is what I'm saying. We gotta read the origin source and see if it's really saying that. Some of their traditions state they crossed the Strait of the Ice, the Chippewas for one, but the most according to their traditions crossed in their canoes. But that the ancestors of the North American Indians came at a some unknown period in the remote past from Asia to the North American continent, there can be no doubt, you see. So this author is still with the hijack that they came from Asia. He's out of Asia theory, just like an out of Africa theory. Nobody's ever from here. They're saying a whole continent was uninhabited. They're saying a whole continent. Their traditions pointed back to the ancient historical events and many other things, though vague by the mist of ages past, yet interestingly strange from proximity to known historical truths. So now he's going to start with his Noah and Ham. And this is what I was saying. A lot of the book in the beginning, he does this as well with other tribes. So let's read it though. All right, we're just reading it to see what he's saying in the mind of a hijack a little bit here. So it says Noah, who lived 350 years after the flood, which occurred 1,656 years from the creation of man, or 2,348 BC, divided the earth according to general opinion among his three sons. To Shem, he gave Asia. So, okay, the middle of the earth, right? It never said Asia. It never said Asia. To Ham, Africa. It never said Africa. It said the hot places or the southern places, right? Shem, the middle of the earth, or the places where it was hot and cold. So you see how they add their things. This is what I'm saying. You got Dutch to hijack a little. And to Japhet, Europe, whose posterity are described occupying chiefly the western and northern regions. So very generalized. This well accords with the etymology of the name, which signifies widely spreading, and how wonderfully did Providence enlarge the boundaries of Japhet. His posterity diverged eastward and westward from the original settlement. So now he's trying to say, you see what he's saying? So he's going to try to say the Indians are Japhet guys. All right, so we're going to dodge all that. That's what he's trying to say because they came from Asia, and that's where Japhet got, right? Okay. So let's get back to the story. We went out of topic a little bit in the mind of a hijack. Now, there is much proof in favor of the belief that the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokees, and Muskogees were living in Mexico when Cortez overthrew the Aztec dynasty. So again, they were coming from Mexico even before that, guys. Remember, we got books. We've read so many books already. We got our Georgia video too, from that author, The Hidden History of Georgia, where we already know many people are going into Georgia from the Caribbean, Mexico, South America. So yeah, there's many also waves, migration waves because of the conquest also coming into the southeast. So he's saying when they overthrew the Aztec dynasty. But heavily has the hand of time, with its weight of years, rested upon the descendants of the people, over whom the two brothers, Choctaw and Chickasaw, swayed the scepter of authority as chiefs, scepter, counselors and warriors, priests, kings, warrior kings, in the unknown ages of the past, and from the time of their traditional migration to that of their first acquaintance with the white race. So again, they don't know when this happened. They're trying to say it happened when Cortez and them came, but it happened way before that. What their vicissitudes and mutations, what their joys and sorrows, what their hopes and fears, what their lights and shadows during the long night of historical darkness was known to them alone, and with them has long been buried in the oblivion of the hidden past, together with that of their entire race. Yeah, that's because you guys don't want us to know. Because you told the story, you conquered and told the story, you burned the books, you burn everything, you hide the truth, you reclassify people. So they're like, yeah, we will never know. Yeah, right. We are gonna know. We are knowing. We do know. Truly, their legends, their songs, their romances, celebrating their exploits would form, if but known, a literature of themselves. And though their ghosts still ride through the forest, and distant echoes of them are still heard in vague tradition, yet they afford but a slender basis for a history for this broad fabric of romance, while around them still cluster all those wonderful series of myths which have spread over the land and assumed so many shapes. But what a volume of surpassing romance, of fondest hopes, of blighted aspirations, of glorious enthusiasms, of dark despair, and of touching pathos would their full history make. They owned this vast continent and had possessed it for ages, exceeding in time the ability of the human mind to conceive, and they too speak of the long infancy of the human race, of its slow advance in culture, of its triumphs over obstacles, and of the final appearance of that better day, when ideas of truth, justice, and that advanced stage of enlightenment had been reached, wherein we speak of man as civilized. Starts to hijack civilized according to who? To Europeans. So again, as he's saying, they were so ancient, they don't know. It's hard for the human mind to conceive in this vast continent, not Asia. This is a true world. This is Asia Major. That's what you don't understand. This is India Superior. This is the farthest east. Their civilization had been grossly underestimated. I'm sorry. They were of a cheerful and joyous disposition, and of a kindly nature, the croaking and snarling of ignorance and prejudice to the contrary notwithstanding. No prejudice. Their civilization has been grossly underestimated. We have unjustly contemplated them to a ridiculous extent through our own selfish and narrow, contracted spectacles, and have so loudly talked of and expatiated upon their forests that we have forgotten their cornfields, and repeatedly spoken of their skills as hunters, until we have overlooked their labors as herdsmen, while at the same time it has been customary everywhere to look down upon them with emotions of contempt and to decry their habits and customs. I do not deny the existence of blemishes in many of their characteristics, nor deny that superstitions and erroneous opinions were prevalent. Dr. Hijack, in his opinion, right? At which we have assumed to be greatly horrified, yet do condemn the modern writers for their want of judgment on this point, and their unreasonable severity, and their condemnation of the Indians, in whom they profess to have discovered so many defects without a redeeming virtue, and their disregard of the truth, that to him alone who is without sin is given the right to cast the first stone. You can't judge. Therefore, how could it be otherwise than that concerning the dealings of the Europeans with the American Indians? There is a sad, fearful, and revolting story to be told. While losing ourselves in the wild revelry of imagination, we dream of that time when our civilization and quixotic ideas of human liberty shall embrace the entire world in its folds. The Choctaws were first made known to the European world by the journalist of that memorable adventurer Hernando de Soto, who invaded their territory October 1540 and introduced the civilized so-called race of mankind to the Choctaws in the following manner. Civilized tribes, huh? A manly, a manly young Indian of splendid proportions. Listen to this now. We've gone over this. We're about to get into Tuscaloosa, the giant, and his son. Now, again, a manly young Indian of splendid proportions, meaning very tall, a giant, and with a face extremely attractive and interesting, visited De Soto after he had left Tallahassee. He was the son of Tuscaloosa, corruption of the Choctaw word Tushka, warrior, Lusa, black, all right? Black warrior. Tuscaloosa means black warrior. He was a giant, a renowned chief whose territories extended to the distant Tombigbee in the west. Tombigbee is a corruption of the Choctaw word Itombi, box, Igby, maker, a name given to a European, it is said, who at an early day settled on the banks of the river and made boxes for the Choctaws, in which were placed the bones of their dead, which will be particularly noticed elsewhere. The young warrior bore an invitation from his father to De Soto to visit him at his capital. The next day, De Soto, advancing to within 6 miles of where the great chief awaited him, made a halt, and sent Luis de Moscoso, Marranos, Sephardi's, Moors, with 15 horsemen to inform Tuscaloosa, or the Black Warrior, of his near approach. Moscoso and his troopers soon appeared before Tuscaloosa, who was seated upon an eminence commanding a broad and delightful view. He was a man of powerful stature, muscular limbs, yet of admirable proportions. Guys, he was about 8 to 9 feet tall. He was really tall, a real giant, mound building descendant. Yeah, with a countenance grave and severe, yet handsome. When De Soto arrived, Tuscaloosa arose and advanced to meet him with a proud and haughty air and said, "Great chief, I receive you as a brother." Yeah, you better say that. You gotta understand how short the Spanish were compared to the Indians. "And welcome you to my country. I am ready to comply with your request." After a few preliminaries in company with Tuscaloosa and his followers, De Soto took up his line of march for Mobila, the capital of the mighty chief. Mobila is a corruption of the two Choctaw words mama or moma, al, bina, a lodge, literally a lodge or encampment for all. On the third day of their march from Piache, a corruption of the Choctaw word piachi, to care for us, they passed through many populous towns well stored with corn, beans, and other provisions. On the fourth morning, De Soto with 100 cavalry and as many infantry made a forced march with Tuscaloosa in the direction of Mobila, leaving Moscoso to bring up the rear. At 8 o'clock the same morning, October 18, 1540, De Soto and Tuscaloosa reached the capital. It stood by the side of a large river upon a beautiful plain and consisted of 80 handsome houses, each large enough to contain 1,000 men, and all fronting a large public square. All right, so what they're leaving out, if I remember correctly, and they do this a lot when it comes to De Soto, they say that these chiefs traveled with them. He was forcing these chiefs to travel with them, guys. He was trying to make them slaves, like, so he's being cool right now with them because he's leading them somewhere. But also, Tuscaloosa is about to set up a trap. You guys remember the story, right? He's about to set up a trap for him. He got his warriors waiting in Mobila. But again, they're not even mentioning the fact that they forced him. He forced him to go over there. So he's like, all right, I'll go with you. So it stood by the side of a large river, upon a beautiful plain, and consisted of 80 handsome houses, each large enough to contain 1,000 men. Okay, this is in the whole neighborhood here, whole town, and it all fronting a large public square. Dodge says in his book styled Our Wild Indians that the aboriginal inhabitants of the North American continent have never at any time exceeded 500,000 souls. Yet, according to De Soto's journalists who were with him in his memorable raid, Mobila alone, listen, consisted of 80 handsome houses, each large enough to contain 1,000 men. Okay? And each house contained Dodge's several families consisting of men with 2 or 3 wives, and children of all ages and sexes occupy, for all purposes, one single lodge, a 12 or 15 feet in diameter. What must have been the number of inhabitants in Mobila, with 80 handsome houses, each large enough to contain 1,000 men, with 2 or 3 or more wives, and children occupying, for all purposes, a space only 12 or 15 feet in diameter. The reader can make the calculation at his own leisure, though it seems Mobila alone contained over half the number of souls that Dodge allows for the entire continent at one time. So you see how they always try to shrink the numbers. Oh, it was unpopular. We didn't really kill nobody. We didn't really relocate. It was just wilderness. It was just a couple people, here and there. Dodge the hijack. That's a lie. A high wall surrounded the town, made of immense trunks of trees set close together, and deep in the ground, and made strong with heavy cross timbers interwoven with large vines, a thick mud plaster resembling handsome masonry, mud that looks like masonry, almost like stucco, right? Concealed the woodwork, while portholes were abundant, together with towers capable of holding 8 men each at the distance of 15 paces apart. There were two gates leading into the town, one on the east, the other on the west. De Soto and Tuscaloosa were escorted into the great public square with songs and chants and the dancing of beautiful Indian girls. They alighted from their horses and were given seats under a canopy of state. Having remained seated for a short time, Tuscaloosa now requested that he should no longer be held as a hostage. All right, there you go. Remember, they never said he was a hostage. This whole time they said he was traveling with him. This is what I was saying. He was making him, forcing him, and he was treating him like a hostage the whole time. And Tuscaloosa played along for a specific reason. So again, Tuscaloosa now requested that he should no longer be held as a hostage, to which De Soto, giving no heed, the indignant chief at once arose and walked off with an independent attitude to where a group of his warriors stood. De Soto had scarcely recovered from his surprise at the independent conduct of Tuscaloosa when Jean Ortez followed the chief and stated that breakfast awaited him at De Soto's table, but he refused to return and added, "If your chief knows what is best for him, he will immediately take his troops out of my territory." At this juncture, De Soto secretly sent word to his men to be prepared for an attack. Then, hoping to prevent an attack until he could gain or again get in possession of the chief, De Soto advanced toward him with assumed smiles and words of friendship. But Tuscaloosa scornfully turned his back upon him and was soon hidden among the multitude of now highly excited warriors. Just then a warrior rushed out of a house, denouncing the Spaniards as robbers and murderers, and declared that they should no longer impose on their chief by holding him as prisoner. His words so enraged Baltasar de Gallagas, Baltasar Moors, that he cut the warrior in twain with one sweep of his broad sword. At the sight of their slain warrior, the Choctaws, with their defiant war whoop, at once rushed upon De Soto and his men. De Soto, placing himself at the head of his men, fighting and retreating, slowly made his way out of the town into the plain, and continued to retreat until he had reached a considerable distance upon the plain. In the meantime, the troopers rushed to secure their horses, which had been tied outside the walls. The Choctaws at once knocked the chains from the hands and feet of the Indians prisoners whom De Soto had brought with him, giving them weapons, bade them help destroy the perfidious strangers. In the first rush, the Choctaws killed 5 of the Spaniards, who had been left outside the walls, and were loudly exulting over their seeming good fortune in dense masses before the gate. At that moment, De Soto, with his cavalry, closely followed by his infantry, made a fearful charge upon the disordered mass of the Choctaws, who were still on the outside of the enclosures, and with a terrible slaughter drove them back into the town. Immediately the Choctaws rushed to the portholes and towers, and hurled clouds of arrows and spears upon the Spaniards, and again drove them from the walls. Seeing the Spaniards again retreat, again the Choctaws rushed through the gate and fearlessly attacked the Spaniards, fighting them hand to hand and face to face, hand to hand combat. Hoo-yah! 3 long hours did the battle rage, the Spaniards now retreating, then the Choctaws. Like a spectre, De Soto seemed everywhere, hewing down on the right and left as if his arm could never tire. That sword, which had been so often stained with the blood of the South American, because he was in the conquest of Peru, guys, De Soto, with Pizarro, was now red with that of the North American, a still braver race. Above the mighty din was heard the voice of Tuscaloosa, encouraging his warriors, his tomahawk wielded by his muscular arm, ascending and descending in rapid strokes like a meteor across a starry sky. But could the feeble bow and arrow and the tomahawk avail against the huge lance and broadsword? What the unprotected body of the Choctaw warrior against the steel clad body of the Spanish soldier? At length, the Choctaws were forced to make a permanent retreat within the enclosure of their town, closing the gates after them. And at the same time, the Spaniards made a desperate charge against the gates and walls, but were met with showers of arrows and other missiles. But the infantry, protected by their bucklers, soon hewed the gates to pieces with their battle axes and rushed into the town, while the cavalry remained on the outside to cut to pieces all who might attempt to escape. Then began a carnage too awful to relate. You guys hear that? The Choctaws fought in the streets. All right, the streets, in the streets, not in the forest, in the streets, in the square, from the housetop and walls. And though the ground was covered with their dead and dying relatives and friends, still no living, one entreated for quarter. Hotter and hotter, and more bloody waxed the desperate conflict. Often the Choctaws drove the Spaniards out of the town, but to see them return again with demoniac fury. To such a crisis had the battle now arrived that there could be no idle spectators, and now we're seeing women and girls contending side by side with the husbands, fathers, and brothers, and fearlessly sharing in the dangers and in the indiscriminate slaughter. All right, so we got another version of this, like very, very detailed version, in my video of Tuscaloosa, and yet the women eventually started joining into the fight, and the children, some of them. At length, the houses were set on fire, and the wind blew the smoke and flames in all directions, adding horror to the scene. The flames ascended in mighty volumes. The din of strife began to grow fainter. The sun went down, seemingly to rejoice in withdrawing from the sickening scene. Then all was hushed. Mobila was in ruins, and her people slain. For 9 long hours had the battle raged. 82 Spaniards were killed, and 45 horses. But alas, the poor Choctaws who participated in the fight were nearly all slain. Garcilaso asserts that 11,000 were slain, while the Portuguese gentleman sets the number at 2,500 within the town alone. You know, a lot could have been enslaved, captured, but yeah, they're saying a lot died supposedly that day. Assuming a point between the two, it is reasonable to conclude that 6,000 were killed in and outside of the town. Tuscaloosa perished with his people. All right, that's when they got Tuscaloosa, the Black Warrior. After the destruction of Mobila, De Soto remained a few days upon the plains around the smoking town, sending out foraging parties, who found the neighboring villages well stocked with provisions. And all these foraging excursions, females of great beauty were captured. Listen, females of great beauty were captured. See how they emphasize the beauty? Beautiful. And added to those taken at the close of the battle. All right? This is who they're enslaving, guys, and sending into their plantations, right? It wasn't so-called Africans. The Spanish came and started enslaving the American Indians. No, this is not before the migration. This is during the time De Soto, the Europeans kind of, you know, decimated the Choctaw and Chickasaw, kind of almost tried to enslave them all, and bring them under their rule, started reclassifying them and all that. So they're taking beautiful women as hostages and slaves, right? On Sunday, the 18th of November, 1540, this monster and his fiendish crew took their departure from the smoldering ruins of Mobila and its brave but murdered inhabitants, and with the poor Mobila girls, at whose misfortunes humanity weeps, resumed their westward march. Thus the Europeans introduced themselves to the Native Americans nearly 4 centuries ago as a race of civilized and Christian people, but proven themselves to be a race of fiends utterly void of every principle of virtue known to man, almost like the Chazars. And thus the Native Americans introduced themselves to the Europeans as a race unknown to civilization and Christianity, dash the hijack, yet proving themselves possessed of many virtues that adorn man, together with a spirit of a true and noble patriotism, martyrs upon the altar of liberty that has never been surpassed. Okay? I challenge history to show a nation whose people ever displayed a more heroic courage in defense of their country and homes than did Tuscaloosa and his brave people in defending their town, Mama Bina. They exposed their naked breasts to the keen lances and swords of those ironclad Spaniards, with but stone and bone tipped spears, and the feeble bow and arrow, which were but as toy pistols against the deadly Winchester rifle of the present day, and heroically stood face to face with their terrible foes, with their frail weapons, and disputed every inch of ground, and yielded only when none was left to fight. That they should have killed 82 of the Spaniards with their feeble weapons is truly astonishing, proving conclusively that had they been on equal footing with the Spaniards, not a Spaniard would have survived to tell the tale of their complete destruction. That we had the same kind of evilness heart that where we don't care, kill all of them, and or in their weapons, they wouldn't have survived. And that's the thing. A lot of times we took in the Europeans, we made alliances, the treaties, and that's a whole other story. That the Mobilians, as they have been called by the early writers, were a clan of the ancient Choctaws. There can be no doubt whatever. The early French colonists established in the south under Bienville called the Choctaws, Mobilians, and Pafalas, corruption of the Choctaw word pin, our kla, people, falaya, tall, and also called the Chickasaws, Mobilians. They also state that the Choctaws, Pifalayas, or more properly, Hotak Falayas, long or tall men, and Mobilians spoke the same language. The present city of Mobile in Alabama was named after Mobila, Ixsa, or clan of Choctaws. Itza, huh? Ixsa, by Bienville at the time he laid its foundation. Momabina or Mobina, from which Mobile is derived, and Pifalaya are pure Choctaw words, according to the ancient traditions of the Choctaws and to which the eight Choctaws now live and still affirm. Their people were, in the days of the long past, divided into two great Itzas. One was Hatak y Oho Lita, Hartak men, their Holikta fenced, example, their men fortify. The other Kashapa Okla, as Kashar Pao Okela, part people, example, a divided people. The two original clans, subsequently divided into six clans, were named as follows: Haijip Tuk Lohosh, the two lakes; Hatak Falaya, as Hartak Falaya Hosh, the long man or men; Okla Hunali Hosh, as Okela Hunali Hosh, people six, the six people. Kusha, that's where you get Six Flags from. That's why they build Six Flags on top of an Indian town. Kusha, Kunsha, being broken. Apela, a help. Chick Asaha, a Chickasaw. In 1721, a remnant of the Mobilians were living at the junction of the Alabama and Tombigbee rivers. Living at the junction of the, sorry, but finally united with other clans of the Choctaws, their own people, and thus became extinct as an Ixsa. The laws of the great Ixas or families, Hatak, I Holata, and Kashap Okla, forbade the marriage of any person, either male or female, belonging to the same clan, which, as the laws of the Medes and Persians, just like the Medes and the Persians, were unchangeable. And to this day, the same laws relating to marriage are strictly observed. So remember, this is from the 1890s. From the destruction of Mobile by De Soto, a long, starless night of nearly 2 centuries throws its impenetrable veil over the Choctaws, shrouding their history in the oblivion of the past. But that they, with other southern tribes, were a numerous and also an agricultural people as far back as the 15th century. There is no doubt, though agricultural to a small extent in comparison with the Europeans, yet to a sufficient degree to satisfy the demands of any people to whom avarice was an entire stranger, and who adhered to the maxim sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. All right, so I don't know what they mean that the Europeans are more agricultural people. Dash the hijack. We invented agriculture here. Where does all these foods come from in the world? When De Soto passed through Georgia, his route was lined with towns, villages, and hamlets, and many sown fields which reached from one to the other. The numerous log pens were full of corn granaries, right, where you store stuff, just like Joseph and the Bible, while acres of that which was growing bent to the warm rays of the sun and rustled in the breeze. On the 18th of September, 1540, De Soto reached the town of Tallahassee, a corruption of the Choctaw word Tuli, rock, and Aisha, abound, example, the place of rocks. It stood upon a point of land almost surrounded by a main river. Extensive fields of corn reached up and down the banks. Again, extensive fields of corn reached up and down the banks, children of the corn. Plentiful, fertile land on the Mississippi, that great river. Extensive fields, right? On the opposite side were other towns, skirted with rich fields, laden with heavy ears of corn. On the third day of March from Piache, they passed through many populous towns, well stored with corn, beans, pumpkins, and other provisions. The three sisters, the three sisters. That's why I'm still growing them to honor the ancestors. They must have known something. But the six great southern tribes, Choctaws, Chickasaw, Cherokees, Muskogees, Seminoles, and Natchez, possessed too grand a country not to attract the eyes of the fortune hunters of all Europe and excite their cupidity to the highest degree. Therefore, the French in Louisiana, the Spaniards in Florida, and the English in Virginia, all right, so called, right? So called. Remember, all these people, a lot of them are the same people. A lot of them are Sephardic Moorish people, Huguenots. Remember, Protestants, like Catholics. So a lot of them, just because they're from different countries or representing different countries, they might have the same origin as well. Okay, and a lot of these were black Europeans. Let's not be biased and one-sided. So, so-called English in Virginia and the Carolinians early sought to establish a foothold in the territories of those warlike and independent tribes by securing each for himself their trade, with a view of ultimately conquering them and thus getting possession of their territories and country, all right? Doing treaties and stuff with them and let's establish trade. Yeah, that's all you wanted because you wanted to get closer because eventually you wanted their land and to enslave them and reclassify them, huh? As early as the 1670s, the English traders and emissaries had also found their way to the Choctaws, Chickasaws, and Muskogees, and but few years had passed before their designs, together with those of the French and Spaniards, were plainly manifested, by each exciting the Indians and influencing them to drive the others from their territories. Each hoping thus to ultimately secure these regions for their own country and their personal interest. As the French had artfully gained and held the friendship and confidence of the Choctaws, so had the English secured and held that of the Chickasaws. Hence, those two brave and then powerful tribes were induced to make frequent wars upon each other, and thus, each foolishly but ignorantly furthering the designs of their mutual foes against themselves. All right, divide and conquer. The Choctaws weakening and destroying the Chickasaws for their benefit of the French alone. and the Chickasaws for their benefit alone of the English, neither caring a flag for either the Choctaw or Chickasaws, only so far as prosecuting their designs the one against the other, each with the hope of driving the other out of the country, and then being enabled easily to subjugate the Indians by their weakened condition, they would soon secure the country. Therefore, the more Indians killed, no matter by whom or by what means, the better. Thus were the grasping hands of the two unscrupulous rivals manifested as long as they possessed any power or authority upon the North American continent, now forming the United States. In 1696, Bienville convened the chiefs of the Choctaws and Chickasaws in council, that he might conciliate their good will by presents, and with a view of impressing them with his power and greatness by an imposing display, he also called together all the colonists within his reach. But his effort to impress the Choctaws and Chickasaws with an idea of his greatness proved more humiliating than flattering to the pride of Bienville, as they manifested to him their utter contempt of such a farcical evidence of power and greatness, by propounding a question to him through one of their chiefs, which was a humiliating proof of the low estimation of which they held him, as well as the entire French people it was. If his people at home were as numerous as those who had settled in their country, and replied Bienville, who had learned to speak their language to some extent, attempted to describe to them the various comparisons, the great numbers and powers of the French. But still the chiefs proved not only to be doubting Thomas's, but wholly established in the belief that all he had said was false, by finally propounding the following questions. If your countrymen are as thick, as you say, on their native soil as the leaves on the trees of our forest, why have they not sent more of their warriors here to avenge the death of those whom we have slain in battle? Good question. When they have the power to avenge their death and then fail to do so, is an evidence of great cowardice or a mean spirit. And why is that the places of the strong and brave soldiers that first came with you, but now dead, are filled by so many little weak and bad looking men, and even boys? Listen to what he's saying to them. If your nation is so great and your people so numerous, they would not thus act. And we believe that our European brother talks with a forked tongue. Our European what? Brother. Brothers. Thus was Bienville fully convinced that the Choctaws and Chickasaws did not tremble through fear of his boosted power, and that they also well knew that he only had about 50 soldiers at his command, and that his attempted display of power had but convinced them of his weakness. And had the Choctaws and Chickasaws been so disposed, they could, with a little handful of their warriors, have wiped out the French colony, Bienville soldiers and all. They could have done that. In 1702, Bienville, then commander of the French in Mobile, secretly sent out a small party of the Choctaws and Chickasaws to solicit their friendship and thus secure their trade. A few chiefs returned with the party to Mobile, whom Bienville welcomed and entertained with affected friendship and assumed hospitality, bestowing presents and soliciting their friendship. Yet in January 1704, says Barnard de la Harpe, page 35 to 83, or 35 and 83, Bienville induced several war parties of the Choctaws to invade the country of the Indian allies of the English, and having taken several scalps, they brought them to Bienville, who rewarded them satisfactorily, thus involving the Choctaws, whose interests he professed to have so much at heart, and destructive warfare so greatly detrimental to their national interests, and proving the shallowness of his professed friendship for the Indians, and the perfectly of his nature in letter to the French minister, October 12th, 1708, in which he suggested the propriety of the French colonists in North America being allowed the privilege of sending Indians to the West India Islands, listen, to be exchanged as slaves for Negroes. What Negroes? They call Indians Negroes. They also call black Europeans Negroes, and asserting that those islanders would give two Negroes for three Indians, who they're really exchanging, right? They didn't say Africans. So I do want to point out again, the story is messed up that, the Choctaws, on behalf of the French, killed Chickasaws because they were fighting against the English. So, like, since some of them did sell out to save their own. But hey, there was a tradition of the Choctaws related to the missionaries over 75 years ago by the old warriors of the Choctaws of that day, who for many years before had retired from the hardships of the warpath, which stated that a 2-year war broke out between their nation and the Chickasaws over 100 years before, about 1705, the advent of the missionaries among them, resulting in the loss of many warriors on both sides and finally ending in the defeat of the Chickasaws, whereupon peace was restored to the mutual gratification of both nations, wearied with the long fratricidal strife. This war had its origin, as the tradition affirms, in an unfortunate affair that occurred in Mobile, then a little French trading post, between a party of Chickasaw warriors, about 70, who had gone there for the purpose of trade, and a small band of Choctaws who had preceded them on the same business. While three together, a quarrel arose between some of the different warriors, resulting in a general fight, in which, though several Chickasaws were killed and wounded, the entire little band of Choctaws were slain as was supposed. But unfortunately for the Chickasaws, a Choctaw happening to be in another part of the town at the time of the difficulty escaped, and learning at once of the killing of his comrades, fled for home, where arriving safely he informed his people of the bloody tragedy of Mobile. Without delay, the Choctaws adopted measures of revenge. So again, remember they were saying earlier how they were putting them against each other. So what really happened there? Why were they fighting? Why did they start fighting in this French trading post? Knowing that the company of the Chickasaw would have to return home through their country, they laid their plans accordingly. The Chickasaws, not without fears, however, lest the Choctaws might have heard of the unfortunate affair, secured an escort from Bayonville of 25 Canadians under the command of Boyce Bryant. As they approached the village, the Choctaws sent a small company to invite and escort them to a council pretendedly to be in session, which the Chickasaws, feeling safe under their escort, accepted. They were escorted to the sham council and were given, as was customary on such occasions, the inside circles, all seated on the ground, while the Choctaws formed a circle completely hemming them in. A Choctaw chief then arose and advanced with great solemnity and dignity to the speaker's place in the center, with a tomahawk concealed under his dress, which, when he drew from its place of concealment, was the signal for the work of death to begin. The speaker went on for a few minutes in a strain of wild eloquence, but saying nothing that would awaken the least suspicion in the minds of his still unsuspecting guests, when suddenly he snatched the fatal tomahawk from its concealment, and in an instant hundreds of tomahawks, heretofore concealed, gleamed a moment in the air, and then descended upon the heads of the doomed Chickasaws. And ere they had time for a second thought, all were slain. The Choctaws, knowing that the Chickasaws would hear of the destruction of their brethren and would retaliate upon them, rushed at once into their country and destroyed several villages ere the Chickasaws could recover from their surprise. Hey, much love, Jacqueline. Appreciate it. Thank you. But the brave and dauntless Chickasaws, ever equal to any and all emergencies, soon rallied from their discomfiture and presented a bold and defiant front. Then commenced a 2-year war of daring deeds and fatal results between those two nations of fearless warriors, known and to be known to them alone. All right. So unfortunately, a 2-year war between brothers and sisters, right? The creek dividing that portion of their territories that lay contiguous to the place where the band of Chickasaws were slain on their return from Mobile, now in the northern part of the Oktibbeha County, Mississippi, and known as Line Creek, was named by the Choctaws after 2 years' war, Nusi, sleep or slept, Tia, Yao Yao, slept, That is, you were taken by surprise. In memory of those two tragical events, the surprise and destruction of the Chickasaw warriors, and the disquiet and discomfiture of their nation at the unexpected attack upon them by the Choctaws. Nusi, Chia, has been erroneously interpreted by some as meaning where acorns abound. Oh, there you go again, them trying to hide the truth with acorns just like corn. Nosi Aisha means where acorns abound. The killing of this little band of Chickasaws under the circumstances, together with that of being under the escort and protection of the French, caused the Chickasaws to believe it was done through the connivance of the French. Listen, and ever afterwards they were the most inveterate, inveterately and uncompromising enemies of the French among all the Indian tribes, north and south, except the Iroquois, and in which, as a matter of course, they were encouraged by the Carolina traders from the English settlements, that the southern Indians were friendly to their foreign intruders and disposed to live in peace with them, and were not such a bloodthirsty people as they have been represented, is clearly demonstrated by the fact that in 1810 there was such a scarcity of provisions that Bienville had to scatter his men among the Indians in order to obtain food for them, and so informed his government, a plan to which he had been driven before, and had not the Indians preferred peace to war with the Europeans, they surely would have embraced such favorable opportunities to destroy the unwelcomed invader of their country. In 1711, through the machinations of the English, who were ever ready to embrace every opportunity to enhance their own interests, though at the destruction of the Indians, the Choctaws and Chickasaws were again involved in a fratricidal war, at the beginning of which there was little company of 30 Chickasaw warriors instead of Choctaws in Mobile, and fearing to return home through the Choctaw Nation, they too earnestly requested Bienville to send a company of his soldiers with them for protection. Bienville, seeing so favorable opportunity of winning the friendship of the Chickasaws and hoping thus to seduce them from their alliance to the English to that of the French, cheerfully complied to their request by sending his brother Chartaunig to escort them through the Choctaw Nation, which he safely did. But the cause and result of this war have long since passed with its participants into the silence of the unknown past. All right. So I think I'm gonna leave it there, guys, because it's actually, as you guys can see, we're just getting started, and we're probably gonna have many parts of this. So we made it all the way to, I guess, 1700s, early 1710s, right? So we shall, do a vote. You let me know if you wanna me to keep reading this book. Of course, we're still gonna get into the migration, full migration story of these people, what they call them, the Muskogees, right? That's the language they're speaking, more of a tribe. But yeah, we're gonna get into that. I have a whole book on that too, translated, official, uh, primary source, right? And we're gonna get into that more in detail. But I hope you guys enjoyed at least a little bit of today's reading. In case this is like in a lot of books, their origin story is, you know, in Mexico mostly. Most of these people, or in the Caribbean, or coming from South America, somewhere. There's a lot of trade and history going on back and forth. And as you guys can see, there was a period of war between the two peoples because of the Europeans. Remember that, especially the French, their whole plan was to get, we learned this in my French enslavement videos, that to get the Indian tribes against each other. That's why that way they can reduce everybody into slavery and servitude and take the land. You're still there, definitely. Yeah, you guys are still there. You have been reclassified, called all kinds of things. You're still there. A lot. Most of you are still there. Um, you know, there's a whole other people that but doesn't mean they don't have the blood too. A lot of them do, and they're your brothers and sisters too. We just gotta stop separating so much based on looks and just try to do genealogy. Know thyself. As an individual, your family, don't judge anybody else, especially if you haven't done your own tree, your own genealogy. Don't just judge of the looks, all right? Don't just judge of the looks. Hold on, guys. So again, that was the book History of the Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Natchez Indians by H.B. or Horatio Bardwell Cushman, Horatio Cushman from 1899. The two brothers, Choctaw, Chickasaw, huh? The two clans, the progenitors of these two tribes, specifically, of these two tribes specifically. Yeah. Don't judge upon looks. Yeah. So it's an hour and a half video. That's why I'm stopping. I don't want people to like. I want people to like. A lot of people don't sit to my 2 hour videos, 2 hour, 3 hour long videos, guys. I got a lot of people that are just coming into having the patience of sitting through a video that's longer than 10 minutes, because they're so used to all these shorts now. And people teaching in 10-minute videos just to get clicks and views, just to make money. And not going really thorough with it, not slowing down, not being human with it, breaking it down in more detail, taking your time with it, you know. So thanks for hearing me read for about an hour and a half, guys. I really appreciate that. It is not easy reading longer than that. Mouth starts getting dry. I'm reading a screen. It's not the same as reading a book. Eyes start getting blurry. But I've done it. I can go 4 or 5 hours without. I can probably do it. But again, I want people to sit down on these videos and we can just do parts of it. We come back and keep reading. So we got to like the 1710s, right? This is like a very brief history, very rush brief 101 crash course. Really, it's not very detailed. But we got some Tuscaloosa drop in case anybody didn't never knew the story. That's kind of when the last stronghold, kind of like the last fight, really. Apart from Tecumseh and all that, Black Hawk. Yeah, yeah, and all these videos eventually we can pick from them. In later years when we're learning about specific things, we'll come. Oh yeah, remember that video? We read this, and then remember that other video? We read this, so we start putting them together. You guys start doing that too. Don't wait on me. You can start putting the story together, corroborating the different books. What we read. Apply it to your knowledge, your history, your genealogy. Know thyself truly. Don't judge again. If you don't know people, don't judge by color, by looks alone. America's a true old world, or part of the true old world, right? For sure. We had every phenotype, every type of hair, every shade of copper complexion, from the lightest copper, to the darkest copper, so-called black, right? And yeah, don't just assume one thing, guys. Like, much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. I might go live later on at night, guys. Maybe. Or even soon. Maybe. I'll drop another little video here and there. Because I got a lot of new people. I got a lot of new people, and they still missing all the original drop from 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 4 years ago. So try to do little segments of those drops, I might drop something. But thanks for tuning in. Check out the Patreon. Join the channel membership. Get some cool perks. We got some baby jaguars in the house. They've been members for a month. We got some baby jaguars in the house. Yeah. On your way to become dracons. On your way to become dracons, jaguar warriors. All right? Black Panthers. Don't worry. Much love. Much love, mi gente, my people. I consider you guys my people. A lot of people say my people like I'm just trying to say Latinos or Hispanic when I say mi gente. I don't mean that. I mean all you guys, you my peoples. Mi gente, my peoples. Yeah, dragon warriors. Yeah. Hey, this video we dedicate to all the all the lives lost and all the struggles against De Soto, all the Chickasaw and Choctaws who had to kill each other for the Europeans and for all the sellouts that kind of were evil and their own people. This memory to Tuscaloosa, who lost his life in that day, and all your ancestors who fought hard, and that's why you're still here. Wow, wow, remember your ancestors and honor the most high, the great spirit. Because our ancestors, as you guys see, as part of their tradition, they always honored the great spirit. It wasn't just about ancestor worship, all right? Not about ancestor worship, guys. Come on now. Wow, pura vida, mi gente. Love you. I'm gonna go out again with Bezo Breeze. Bezo Breeze. We're gonna have the dancing girl again. Hold up. She's gonna dance for us on the way out. Hold up. Hold on. Hold up. Hold up. Hold up. Yeah, shout out to Bezo Breeze, man. He sent me so many beats, man. I really appreciate him very much. And this one right here is just fire. 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 All right. And she's gonna lead us out dancing, all right. Much love. Pura vida, mi gente. Wow.